In the sixth lecture, Paul Cantor, in his Commerce and Culture series, he talks about the economics of modernism. So he's been talking more about market versus patronage, kind of in the early days of when those were happening. And in this one, he kind of segues over into talking about market and different aspects of market, kind of a capitalism versus Marxist approach, and all of that kind of stuff. Really, really fascinating stuff. So where we left off was in the 19th century, talking about these novels. We had talked about the huge success of Charles Dickens that he had with these series novels, and basically becoming a millionaire through that. So there's a group of people that wasn't very happy about that, and that was poets. Because before 19th century, poems were basically the form of literature. That's what you read. And novels were really a rebellion. In some ways, they felt like a rebellion against it. Cantor talks about how there were actually campaigns at that time who were talking about, don't let your kids get into these novels, becoming addicted to them week after week, month after month. Just talking about how bad they were. Definitely some parallels to what we see now with TV or smartphones or stuff, telling kids or telling parents not to let their kids get addicted to it. So it'll be interesting to see in another 200 years what that looks like, but I guess we'll have to wait for that to see. So anyway, so these poets were not very happy about the success that the novels had had. And what Cantor talks about is that it's not like the poets didn't have success. If you look at between 1800 and 1900, there were a ton more poets during that time. However, the success of the novel had gone even further up. So, if you got your poets and your novels here at the beginning, and by the end, it's like the novels are way up here. They've super surpassed them. And that's something that you have to think about with capitalism, that capitalism guarantees lots of wealth, but it doesn't spread it around equally. And because of this, artists basically felt like the market had betrayed them. These poets who had been, doing work with the market or whatever it was, it's like, oh, the market has betrayed us because these people are so much more successful than we are. He quotes a guy who says something about basically, why can't we all be millionaires? And I think a lot of times we have that approach too. We look at Hollywood or whatever and we say, oh, look at all these rich people doing all this entertainment stuff. Why can't I, get that kind of money for what I do? It's just as important or more important, whatever it is. So we kind of have these grudges. Artists felt like the market had betrayed them. And because of that, they basically became different for the sake of being different. And this is where a lot of that modernist movement came from this envy of arts or kinds of art that were succeeding more than other ones. Basically, this idea, this sounds a little bit harsh, but they came up with, if the art succeeds, it's bad, and if it's rejected, it's because it's good. Basically, the mentality of the more difficult, the more incomprehensible, the better the art is. And so, it seems a little bit ridiculous, but this is a lot of what they developed during this time of trying to get their art more appreciated. He talks about Arnold Schoenberg and verse Richard Wagner, and how Wagner had a lot of incredible music and stuff, and Schoenberg just realized that he couldn't compete with that, so he came up with a lot of this more abstract kind of music. You see the same thing with art, where it's like, there's this beautiful art that we've talked about that's been going on, and then this abstract art that comes along, and it's like people just say, oh, you don't understand it, it's incomprehensible to you, it's beyond you. That's what makes it good, and so it just seems a little ridiculous to me. But I know that this would be a debate that I couldn't have because I don't understand all the aspects of it, but it does seem to be a little bit ridiculous in some of the ways that this modernist movement has come about, and something that I love that Cantor talks about, and he gives it several caveats. This is the extreme of what I'm saying, but this whole approach is basically saying modernism is not anti-commercial because it's rebellious, but it's rebellious because at its heart, it's anti-commercial. So realizing that, it's basically like, it's not that good. So because of that, they have to be rebellious to make it seem good. And I'm guilty of kind of giving into some of this, with modern music or whatever. It's like, oh no, like you would never admit, oh yeah, I like pop music. It's always like, oh no, yeah, I don't listen to all the mainstream stuff. I like the indie stuff over here. It's like, I'm not into the pop culture, because it's like, it's a bad thing to like good stuff. And it's, that's a little bit of a different story, but it's like, you can't be into the good stuff because that's not what's actually good. It's this other indie stuff over here. And it's not that can't be good either. It's just, it's more the mentality behind it. So really a lot of really interesting stuff behind that. He closes talking about one thing, talking about government involvement, which I think he's going to talk about even more in the lecture tomorrow with totalitarianism. But really interesting. He brings back the fact that government involvement basically says artists need shielding from the market by saying, they can't have all this pressure of money and all that stuff. They just need to be able to create without that pressure. And he brings that to its logical conclusion of basically pleasing an audience is a bad thing. And that seems like an extreme. That seems like, what? That's not what it's actually saying. They're just saying that, by relieving the pressure from them, they'll be able to create better art. But that's not necessarily true. That's not like that's been proven or something, that not having that pressure, allows you to create better art. And in reality, what better way to create good art, to be forced to create good art, than having the pressure of, if you don't, you won't have customers to partake in that art, to consume that art. That's the best way of making sure that you are going to have art that is consumable and that's your customers want. And if you disagree, you can look at all the lectures that we've looked at with these artists, whether musicians or artists that were heavily involved with the market and commercial living.